She saw the child before she saw the man. The wagon came up the Rush Creek Road at a walk in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon in September, and Hetty Marchbanks straightened up from the goat pen with her hand shading her eyes and got the whole of it in one look. A good mule and a poor one. A wagon with a box built up high and canvas over the top of it and a stovepipe elbow poking through the canvas, which is a thing a man does to a wagon when the wagon is not a way of getting somewhere, but is the place he lives. And on the seat up beside the man, a girl of about 6 with her heels hooked on the footboard and a tin in her lap. The man pulled up at the yard gate and did not get down. "Ma'am, I was told at Millsap Ford you were wanting fence." "I am." "How much of it?" 80 rods. "South line, along the creekside, where the Kelso cattle come through to my spring." Hetty came around the pen and wiped her hands down her apron. "The wire's stacked and paid for, and the posts are cut and seasoned and lying where they'll go. I want 3 wire, and I want the corner braced right. Because the last man who built me a corner did it in an afternoon, and it walked before Christmas." The man took that in. He looked down the length of the south line where it ran off through the post oak toward the creek, and he took his time with it, and he did not hurry his answer for her benefit. He set his forearms on his knees. "The fence will cost $10. It was a fair price, and they both knew it. Hetty Marchbanks had been buying labor on that place for 4 years, and she could price a job to the $quarter. She was not looking at the man when she answered him. She was looking at the girl on the wagon seat, who had not said a word and had not fidgeted and had the settled patience of a child who has spent a great many hours on a wagon seat waiting for grown people to finish talking. Hetty smiled. "I'll pay 15 if you stay for supper." His name was Asa Rook, and he had been fencing the cross timbers for 2 years, working from the wagon, moving when the work moved, which in that country meant every 11 days or so. He said no to the 15 twice before he said yes. The first time he said the job was worth 10, and he would take 10. The second time he said that he and the girl carried their own provisions and did not eat off the people they worked for, which was true and which had cost him more than one job in a country where a meal is how a thing gets settled. The third time Hetty Marchbanks put both hands on the top rail of her own gate and told him that she was 36 years old and had eaten every supper for 4 years standing at the stove out of the pot, and that she was not offering charity, she was buying company, and if that offended him he could take the 10 and she would find somebody else to eat with. Asa Rook thought that over. Then he got down and set the brake and lifted the girl off the seat, and the girl came down with the tin still in her arms and stood in the yard looking at the goats. "Pearl, this is Mrs. Marchbanks. How do you do?" Pearl Rook transferred the tin to one arm to have a hand free, and then thought better of it and kept both arms around the tin. "How many goats have you got?" 9, 10 in the spring." "That's a lot." "It's not, but I'm working on it." The girl considered this and nodded once and went to look at the goats, and Hetty went in and put a stove lid back on a fire she had let go down, and started supper for 3 for the first time since Dorsey Marchbanks came off a horse in the October of 1884. The place was 160 acres and a spring. The spring was the whole of it, in the way that in that country a spring is the whole of a place. It came out of a limestone shelf at the head of a draw, and it had never once in living memory gone dry, and every man on Rush Creek knew it, and Amos Kelso to the south had been letting his cattle drift up to it for 4 years on the understanding that a widow would not make anything of it. Hetty had made something of it in her own way. She had bought the wire in April. Asa started on the fence at first light Wednesday, and Hetty went down at mid-morning with the coffee pot and stood and watched him set a corner for a while, and what she saw satisfied her. He dug past the frost line for no better reason than that a hole ought to be that deep. He tamped in layers, A little dirt and a strike. A little dirt and a strike. 40 strikes to a post, and he did not vary it because the day was hot. When he strung the first wire, he ran it out slack and left it slack overnight and came back to tension it in the cool of the morning, which is a thing very few men will wait to do. Pearl worked alongside him. She had a nail apron cut down to her size and a job, which was to carry staples and to count posts, and she did the job with the seriousness of a bookkeeper. On the second morning, Pearl asked her what a rod was, and Hetty told her 16.5 feet, and the girl went quiet doing something behind her eyes, and then reported that 80 rods was 1,320 feet, and asked whether that was a long way. Hetty said it was about a quarter of a mile. Pearl said that she had walked a great deal further than that many times, and did not see what the fuss was, and went back to counting posts. At noon, Hetty rang nothing and called nothing. She simply carried the dinner down to the fence line on a board and set it on the wagon tailgate, and the three of them ate it in the shade of the post oaks with the wire lying slack in the grass beside them. Pearl ate 2 helpings of everything. Hetty learned the shape of it in pieces over those first days, never by asking. Lyda Rook had died of typhoid in Sedalia when the girl was 4, along with a good deal else that Asa did not go into. There had been a rented house and a job in a wagon shop, and neither of them had survived the doctor bills. What was left after the sale was a wagon, 2 mules, a fencing outfit, and a daughter, and a man who had decided that keeping the 4 of those things together was the whole of what he was for. Her father noticed. He did not say anything about it, but Hetty saw him notice, and she saw what it did to his face before he got it put away. The 80 rods should have taken 4 days. It took 9. Nobody said anything about that either. On Thursday, Asa found that the posts on the creek end had been cut green and would want a different setting, which was true and which cost a day. On Saturday, he took the whole of a morning to build a gate that had not been contracted for, into the middle of the run, hung on a limestone set post, because a fence across a creek bottom without a gate in it is a fence a man has to ride 2 miles around. On Monday it rained. And every evening at 6:30 he washed at the trough and put on the clean shirt and came in and ate supper at Hetty Marchbanks's table. And he paid her back for it by doing whatever needed doing in the last hour of light, and neither one of them ever once mentioned the arrangement out loud again. Pearl put the kitchen in order. It started on the second night. She dried and she put away, and she asked where each thing went, and she asked once, and remembered. By the 4th night, she was not asking. By the 6th, she knew that kitchen better than her father knew it, and better, Hetty suspected, than the girl knew any other room on the face of the earth. On the 7th night, Hetty came in from shutting the goats and found Pearl on a chair at the shelf, moving the salt. "That's not where it lives," the girl explained. "It lives here, by the flour, because you use them together. It was over there because you put it down in a hurry Tuesday when the pot went over." Hetty stood in her own doorway with her hand on the latch. "You've been keeping track. I keep track of where things go." Pearl got down off the chair and pushed it back under the table, square, the way she had found it. When you live in a wagon, you have to. If you don't put a thing back the same place it's gone for good, because it goes under the box and you can't get under the box without unloading the whole of it. She said it plainly, as information. "So you did that here?" "I did it the first night." The girl looked around the kitchen, at the shelf and the flour and the salt now beside it. "It only took me till Friday. It's a small house." Asa Rook was in the doorway behind her. He had come in for the lamp and he had stopped, and he had heard the whole of it, and he stood there with his hat in his hand and his face, doing something he could not get on top of quickly enough. He put the hat back on and went out and got the lamp lit outside and did not come back in for 10 minutes. Hetty let him have the 10 minutes. She went to Millsap Ford on the Wednesday for salt and lamp oil and did not come home with either one. What she did instead was spend 4 hours on the seat of her own wagon going up and down Rush Creek, and by dark she had 860 rods of fence work written out on the back of a mercantile bill in her own hand. Ott Pruitt wanted 200 rods and had wanted it for a year. The Sowell brothers wanted a drift fence on the north half and had been waiting on a man out of Weatherford who kept not coming. Ms. Coy wanted her orchard closed against the deer and would pay in cash and beef. Amos Kelso himself, when she got to him last and put it to him straight, allowed that he would take 400 rods along his own line if it came to that, and paid on the spot for the first 100, and had the grace to go red about the ears while he did it. Every one of those jobs was inside 8 miles of her south gate. She had not gone at it gently. At Ott Pruitt's she had walked the man down to his own washed-out corner and made him look at it. At the Sowells she had named the Weatherford man who kept not coming and asked how many springs they intended to give him. At Ms. Coy's she had eaten a slice of cake she did not want and listened to 20 minutes about a nephew before she got a word in, and had got the word in. She had said the same sentence at every gate, and she had said it about the corner post in the cool of the morning. And by the third gate she had noticed that she was proud of saying it. She put the paper on the table that night after Pearl had gone up to the wagon to sleep. Asa read it through. He read it twice, the way he did most things. Then he set it down and pushed it back across the table toward her and said the thing she had been braced for since about 2 o'clock that afternoon. "I didn't ask you to do this. No, you didn't. A man makes his own work. He does." Hetty kept her hands around her cup, and a man who makes his own work in this country moves every 11 days from March to November, and a girl who moves every 11 days doesn't go to school, and doesn't have a friend, and learns to put the salt back in the same place because if she doesn't, she'll never see it again. She let that sit. "I didn't get you that work out of pity, Mr. Rook. I got it because you set a corner post deeper than you were paid to, and you wait for the cool of the morning to tension wire, and there is not another man between here and Weatherford who does either one of those things, and I told every one of them so." He turned the paper around on the table with one finger. 800 rods. 860. That's most of a year. It is, working out of one camp. Working out of my south pasture if you'll have it, or out of the Sowells if you'd rather, and I'd think less of you for it, but I'd understand it. Asa Rook sat at that table for a long moment, with his hand flat on the paper. She'd be in one place. She would. He did not say yes that night. He said he would look at the Sowell ground on Friday, but he folded the paper along her crease and put it inside his hatband, which was where he kept the things he intended to keep, and Hetty saw him do it and said nothing at all. The letter came on the 2nd of October, and it was from the Ratcliffe outfit in the Panhandle. Asa had written to them in the spring, the way he wrote to everybody, and they had got around to him at last. They were putting a drift fence across 60 miles of the Canadian breaks, and they wanted crew bosses, and they were paying $60 a month and found, which was more money than Asa Rook had seen in one place in his life. 60 days. Winter work. A tent camp on open ground in the Panhandle in December, with the wind coming down off the caprock and 40 men in it. No place on this earth for a girl of 6. He would have to leave her. That was the arithmetic of it, and there was no way around the arithmetic. 60 days at $60 was $120, which was a lot of school shoes and a lot of doctor money and a start on ground of his own, and to get it, he would have to hand his daughter to somebody for 2 months and go north. And there was only one somebody within 8 miles. He did not tell Hetty about the letter. He told her about it 4 days later, on the 6th, and only because Dovey Kelso had already been by. Dovey Kelso had come on the Thursday with a jar of pickle and a great deal of goodwill, and had sat in Hetty's kitchen for an hour, and had got to it at the end the way that kind of woman always does, standing up, with her bonnet already tied. I'll only say it once, and then I'll never say it again. There's a man camped on your place 5 weeks. Folks are counting the weeks, Hetty. They counted for me when Amos went to Fort Worth for a month, and I had a hired boy in the barn. And I'd not wish it on you. She got the door open. You're a widow with a spring on your land, and there's men on this creek who'd like a reason to say you can't manage it. Don't hand them one. Hetty thanked her for the pickle and shut the door and stood with her back against it. The worst of it was that Dovey Kelso had come out of kindness and had been right on every particular. 5 weeks was 5 weeks. A spring that had never gone dry was a spring that men had opinions about. And Hetty had buried a husband and held that ground alone for 4 years on nothing but the general understanding on Rush Creek that she was a careful woman who gave nobody anything to talk about, and she had spent that understanding down to nearly nothing in a little over a month, and she had done it with her eyes open and would do it again. That was the part she could not get comfortable with, not the talk. The fact that she had counted the cost in September and paid it anyway. That evening she told Asa about the visit, plainly and completely, because she was not going to be a woman who managed a thing quietly and let a man walk into it. And Asa Rook, who had been carrying a letter in his hatband for 4 days, took it out and put it on the table. They read each other's news in the same 10 minutes at the same table, and when it was done there was not one thing either of them could say that would make any of it come out different. Hetty turned the letter around to face her. $60 a month. 60 and found. And she'd stop here. If you'd have her. Which is the whole of what's wrong with it. He put both hands on the table. I'd be handing you my daughter and handing you the talk in the same week. Dovey Kelso counts weeks now. She'd count a good deal harder with a child in the house and the man gone north. Let her count. You don't mean that. You bought that wire in April with your own money because Amos Kelso thinks a widow won't hold what she's got. His voice did not rise. The day this creek decides you can't manage your place is the day somebody makes a run at your spring, and I am not going to be the reason it happens. Hetty had no answer for that, because it was true. Neither of them noticed that the door to the lean-to was open a hand's width, or that it had been open a while. Asa told Pearl on the Sunday. He did it the way he did everything, straight through and without dressing it up, sitting on the wagon tongue with the girl beside him. 60 days. The panhandle. She would stop with Mrs. Marchbanks and mind her and go to school at Millsap Ford, and he would be back before Christmas or a little after, and there would be money. Pearl heard the whole of it out. She did not cry, and she did not argue. She asked one question. After that, do we go on? Her father did not answer fast enough. Pearl got down off the wagon tongue and went into the house. She was gone perhaps 2 minutes. Hetty was at the stove, and she heard the girl come in and heard her go to the corner where she kept her things stacked square against the wall and heard the sound of a tin lid coming off. Then Pearl Rook came into the middle of that kitchen and set the tin down on the table. It was a tobacco tin with the paint mostly gone off it. She took the lid off and turned it out, and the money came out on the boards in a heap and spread, and she went after the ones that rolled and brought them back and put them in the pile. Her father had come in behind her and stopped in the doorway. $2.40. Pearl put her hand flat beside the money. It's mine. It's from the Souls for carrying water and from the man at Millsap Ford for holding his horse, and there's 40 cents in it that Papa gave me at Christmas. Nobody in that room moved. I heard you, the girl said to Hetty. The first day, at the gate. Papa said the fence would cost $10, and you said you'd pay $15 if he stayed for supper. Her chin came up and stayed up. So a supper is $5. I worked it out. 10 and then 15, so it's 5. Hetty Marchbanks put her hand on the back of a chair. Pearl, it's not enough for one. I know it's not enough for one. The girl's voice went, and she took hold of it and got it back and kept going. But I thought, if I gave you all of it, you might let me owe you the rest. I'd work it. I'd carry water, and I'd do the goats, and I'd put everything back where it goes. She looked at the money on the table and then up. I don't want to go on after. I want to stop here. I've been putting your kitchen in order for 5 weeks, and I did it so it'd be right, and I did it so you'd want us to. Asa Rook made a sound in the doorway. Pearl turned around to her father then, 6 years old, with $2.40 on the table behind her. You can go to the Panhandle. I'll stop and I'll be good. But when you come back, I don't want the wagon. I've never once put a thing back and had it stay where I put it. Not one time in my whole life. And here it stays. He did not go to the Panhandle. He was out at the wagon before daylight Monday, and Hetty heard him and did not go out. Because there are things a man has to be let do by himself. What he did was take the box off. He drew every nail out of the living box of that wagon, one at a time, working around it, saving the nails in a can, because he was not a man to waste a nail. He took the canvas off the bows and folded it. He took the bows down, he pulled the stovepipe elbow out through the hole in the canvas and set it aside. Then he got the box off the running gear with a pole and a rock for a fulcrum and the poor mule for the last of it, and he laid the boards out in the yard in the gray light and stood looking at what he had. Good pine. 2 years of weather in it and no rot anywhere, because he had oiled it every spring. He built the bed out of it that day and the next, a child's bed with a proper frame and a rail, jointed and pegged, and he did the joints the way he dug post holes, which is to say further than anybody was going to pay him for. He put it in the lean-to along the warm wall where the kitchen stovepipe went up. He worked without hurrying, and he worked without stopping, and Pearl sat on the chopping block in her coat and watched every nail come out of the only house she had ever had, and she did not say one word the entire morning, and she did not go inside either. He kept the running gear. A man who fences 860 rods needs a wagon. But the box he lived out of was gone into the wall of a house, and every soul on Rush Creek who came by that fall could see it lying there in the yard in pieces and work out for themselves what it meant. He came in on the Tuesday evening with the sawdust still on him and found Hetty at the table with the tobacco tin in front of her and the $2.40 back inside it. I'll be a while paying you the 10. You'll never pay me the 10. You built me a gate I never ordered, and you set 9 posts on the creek end twice. Then I'll be a while paying you the 15. Hetty Marchbanks looked at him across her own kitchen. You've been paying the 15 since the 2nd of September. Sit down and eat it. He did not sit down. He stood on the other side of that table with his hands hanging and got out the thing he had come in to say, and it was 4 sentences long, and there was not one word of poetry anywhere in it, and it was enough. They were married in November at the church in Millsap Ford, and Dovey Kelso cried harder than anybody and told 6 people it was the finest thing she had ever seen come out of Rush Creek. The south fence held through the winter. The corner never walked. Amos Kelso's cattle went down to Amos Kelso's water, and Amos Kelso paid for 400 rods of his own line in the spring and shook hands on it at the gate that had not been contracted for. Asa Rook fenced Rush Creek for 9 years and never once camped out for it. Pearl went to school at Millsap Ford from the 2nd week of October and could read anything put in front of her by March, and she slept every night of that winter in a bed made out of the wagon she had been born in the back of, along the warm wall, where the stovepipe kept the boards warm to the touch until well past midnight. The tobacco tin sits on the 2nd shelf in that kitchen, beside the flour and the salt. There is more in it now than there was. Pearl puts something in it most Saturdays, and she has never once taken anything out, and she has to stand on the chair to reach it, and every time she does, she pushes the chair back square under the table when she is finished.